Welcome everyone to this episode of the Pathfinder series, an initiative of Entrepreneurship Cell of NIT Trichy. We have with us Mr. Kishore Kharat, a banking industry giant and eminent personality as our guest today.
One thing I have learned during this my 41 years of journey in banking that there is nothing substitute for hard work. You must have heard this sentence, but I have lived with that sentence.
Welcome, sir. For those of you who are not
Thank you.
aware of him, Mr. Kishore Kharat is an acclaimed banker with over 40 years of experience in India and abroad. He was a former managing director and CEO of Indian Bank, and within a short span of 16 months, guided the bank to be India's number one bank. Before his stint at Indian Bank, Mr. Kishore Kharat was a former managing director and CEO of IDBI Bank. He was also the member of advisory board of IRDAI and the member of RBI Subcommittee on Financial Inclusion. He was the president, governing council of Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India. Alongside these experiences, he has held various chairmanship and director positions in asset management and life insurance sectors of various banking companies in India and abroad. Wow, this gentleman has got all of them. He has got tremendous experience, but none of this was given to him on a platter. Sir, firstly, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We once again welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arvind. Thank you, Rohan, for inviting me for this wonderful interaction with the students of NIT Picture. In fact, I am really glad to meet all of you. This is the first time I'm meeting the students and who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. So let me see how best I can talk to you. And during this interaction, I'm actually looking forward to learn what issues you are going through and how I can address them. And I think this interaction will help both of us. I will also learn quite a few from this younger generation. Thank you so much.
Definitely, sir. Sir, moving on to the first question. You started your journey as a clerk in a public sector bank and rose to the
Yeah.
topmost position that anyone could aspire for. That's an incredible feat for sure. Would you please share your story with us?
Yes, sure. Actually, I was aspiring to be a student like you, but because of certain circumstances at home, I was required to leave my education in between. In fact, I had just gone for, you can say, one first year. That those days we used to call it a pre-degree, and then 3 years of degree course used to be there. So after pre-degree, I had to take up a job for the sake of my family, and then I was joined in Bank of Baroda as an undergraduate clerk. Why I'm saying undergraduate clerk, because those days there used to be two different categories: graduate clerks and undergraduate clerks. Graduate clerks were getting little better salary, and they were getting also chance of getting for appearing for the further promotion uh, much earlier than the undergraduate clerk. But I continued my education by appearing for the external courses with the University of Pune. I completed my BCom with honors, and fortunately, where I was living, my first posting was actually in Satara city, and where I was living in one of the chawl, just next to that was one Ismail Said Mullah Law College. And that college used to be actually at the night time they used to have their courses. Then I thought of why not to join a night time for that college, though I completed my LLB uh, learning at night school at that Ismail Said Mullah Law College. And once I was graduated in law, then I was actually thinking of pursuing my career in as an advocate. But somehow the destiny was written somewhere else, so I continued in the banking industry. Then my first promotion I got after 5 years, a little more than 5 years, and I became an officer. And that was actually a starting point of my career. Before that, I never, in fact, when I joined as a clerk, I never thought that I will become officer anytime in the banking industry. But to my luck, because I was actually studying also, I was uh, doing hard work. And let me tell you, one thing I have learned during this my 41 years of journey in banking that there is nothing substitute for hard work. You must have heard this sentence, but I have lived with that sentence. And throughout my journey, I used to, because I was learning on my own, I used to learn various banking departments also. Wherever I was not even posted, I used to go during my free times and learn what is happening in that department. Uh, Try to understand the nuances of that department. So likewise, I kept on, grooming myself. Uh, that is learning myself, you can say. And then slowly, every promotion, I used to aspire for the promotion, but promotions used to be very tough in public sector bank because there are a lot of candidates appearing. But if you have a wonderful performance and if you have actually given more than what is expected, or extraordinary what we say, per performance. So that extra actually makes the difference. I always look at that extra when you perform. The otherwise the ordinary performance will not pay you anything. And in the public sector, when you are working, you are again you are required to go through various selection processes wherein it is a performance plus your aptitude test, your personality test. So everything used to matter. So only performance was not actually going to be going to come for my rescue. And I had come actually from the rural area. My education was in the Marathi medium, and my college, my school also used to be very ordinary school. I still remember we were not having benches to sit on the bench. We used to sit on the floor, ground floor, on the ground with we used to call it a busker, small piece of cloth. Everybody used to carry, and our roof also was not that great because in rainy season it used to leak, and there. I used to always aspire, even those days when I was in second, third, fourth standard, that one day I will sit on the bench and study because those benches were available from 8th standard up to 7th standard. There were no bench for your information. Nowadays, you are having all kind of facilities in your schools and colleges. So, because of such background, I was not having good vocabulary. I was not able to speak good English, and then how to impress people in the interview panel. So then, because interviews, even though you are learning or you are studying in the vernacular languages, normally the uh, organizations which are actually, let's say, national organizations, their employees will come from various states. So therefore, normally interviews are preferred in English. If you are not in a position to talk proper English, then they also conduct in Hindi. But I used to prefer to answer in English just to impress the interviewers. That is how I kept on growing myself. Then I got second promotion, third promotion. Likewise, I kept on actually getting the promotions. I rose up to the general manager. I was during that journey. I was also posted twice in the overseas centers. My first posting was actually in Dubai, and my second overseas posting was in West Indies, where I had gone to set up the West Indies operations for the bank. And as I told you, I was not able to speak good English. I was not able to converse properly. Uh, but the destiny had put my given my first posting in Goa in 1982. I am giving you these stories because you should understand how one can actually keep on improving yourself, even if you are posted there. And in 1982, Goa just liberated in 1960, and the mother tongue of Goan people was English. The second alternate language which they used to talk was Portuguese. And particularly, I was posted in South Goa. Today's Goa is actually all developed Goa. There are a lot of people, actually, tourists are going. So people are talking various languages. People are talking Hindi. Those days, only English or Portuguese. And I had gone actually in depression because I was not able to speak even one good sentence. I was not able to construct even sentence in English and converse with the customers. I used to feel very much rather what you can say one inferiority complex had started developing. That even the illiterate people used to come there, they were not able to write, but they will speak in English. And then I was thinking, I am graduate, I am an officer, and still I am not able to understand what they are talking. But then there was one customer with us. He was a doctor, and he started counseling me. He's told me that don't take any tension or anything. This is just another language because you are not conversed in this language. You are finding it difficult. But keep on talking, even if you are committing mistakes. Grammatically, you may be committing mistakes, but unless you speak, unless you talk, you are not going to improve. And your vocabulary also will improve only with that. You start reading Times of India. So that was the first time I started reading a newspaper, Times of India. He said, whether you understand or not, right from starting sentence up to end, you read that newspaper. And whichever word you don't understand, keep dictionary next to you and see what exactly is the meaning of that. So that is how my journey of learning English started. But over a period when I was posted abroad, people even did not realize that I must be coming from such a background where I was one time not able to even speak English. And this helped me actually in West Indies when I went there. I was finding it difficult initially to understand what those people are talking because they were also talking English. I was also talking English. But then our languages were different, our expressions were different. But over a period, I got set there also. In 3.5 years, I was able to mingle very well with them, all of them. So this is how my journey started. I reached up to general manager level, and by the time I reached general manager level, I think I had almost worked in almost all the departments, and that gave me a little kind of confidence. Actually, when you work, when you soil your own hands in any department, your confidence level goes up. Many times, only by academic knowledge or only by reading books or theoretical knowledge doesn't help. Unless you have worked practically, you will not be able to understand and deal with that situation. It has helped me because I myself was actually working in various department. I was taking interest in learning every time, and because of that, my domain knowledge kept on improving, and that helped me even at the competition for from general manager. Normally, you are elevated to executive director of the bank, and to government can post you some other bank also. So I was selected as the executive director. I was posted in Union Bank of India as a ED, and to my luck, within short time, the government of India had decided to actually invite applications for MD's post, and that was an open competition. Open competition in the sense normally we used to have normally there is a promotions from the internal stock, means whosoever executive directors are there, from there only the government of India will pick up some people who are the best candidates for the MD. But this was the first exercise where government wanted that people even from the private sector should come and compete for MD's post. So they had opened these five banks, top five banks for to select MDs from the open market. I applied for that because I was, of course, I was eligible, and then I got selected. Out of 69 candidates, I actually came in that top five, and then I was posted as a MD of IDBI Bank, which is one of the best industrial development bank of India. Uh, it was one of the best development finance institute. So I learned a lot many things there. So from there, then my last journey, my last destination was I was MD and CEO of Indian. During this journey, I also got opportunity to work on various subsidiaries as a chairman, various subsidiaries as a director. That is how I was exposed to various sectors. I worked in insurance sector. I worked in uh, that EDII. Also, I was on the governing council. So actually, in life, there are a lot of opportunities will crop up. Lot of opportunities will come for you to learn. The destiny will keep on giving you. It is up to you that how you are picking up those opportunities and converting them into your career progression. So with this brief on my banking career, I think I will stop here so that we can accommodate further questions, whatever are there from your side. I hope you like my journey.
It was indeed an inspiring journey, sir.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us about your life as a student and the experiences you had, which has molded you for this eventful journey?
Yeah, as I told you, I actually came from a rural background, and I was Our school actually it was not that great school, but municipal schools are there. So our school was of that block development authorities. But one good thing in our school was uh, we used to have one teacher up to seventh standard, the standard first, and that was I don't know whether that was the education system or that was the system in our school. But in the first standard when we got enrolled, uh, from there till seventh standard, we used to have one teacher who was our main teacher who used to actually take care of all of us, and then there were different teachers used to come and teach us, but all of the teachers were the same. So you can say it was like a gurukul. And particularly those days, seventh standard used to have one more mini board examination. Now you are having, I think, HSC higher secondary. So like that, we used to have seventh standard also. There used to be a board examination, and then there used to be an examination for of the board also, and that was 11th standard. Nowadays, you are having 10th and 12th. So in that school, they used to prepare us for the seventh standard because they used to say ki uh, you have to pass this examination, and those examinations used to be at a district level. Uh, so those I still remember sixth and seventh standard. We were required to even sleep in the schools. So we used to take our beddings and go and sleep there. Our teacher will woke up us at 4 o'clock early in the morning, 4 a.m. We used to do some prayers, and then within half an hour, like 4:30, he used to start taking our revisions. Then go home, have some tea, have bath, tea, coffee, and again come back for the school. Then there will be a regular school. Again go home, after evening tea and dinner, again come back to school with your books. Night time again up to 10 o'clock, they will take our classes. Again, the revisions will be there. So like that, they used to groom us. And perhaps that was the reason that how we became, curious, or how we became good learners, you can say. Because throughout that our childhood, although teachers used to give us a lot of time for playing also, but there was nothing that you must only study. We used to play a lot, but at the same time they never allowed us to lose focus from our regular study. So that was our journey. And then 8, 9, 10 standard, of course, were the higher secondary for us. And in higher secondary, then there was a co-ed actually with boys and girls. We used to learn together. So the community living also automatically it got imbibed in our DNA. How to study with the rather mixed genders, right? And then we were exposed to various social activities also there. I was actually in a national credit national that NCC you call, no? So I was captain of NCC also of my batch. So like that, our school life was really very interesting.
That was a nice period pass, sir. Sir,
Thank
in
you.
your experience, how has the banking sector played a role in nation building these past years, and how do you think this will change in the coming decade?
Okay, great. If you look at the development of our country, first of all, for the development, what is required is you need funds, you need wealth for the development to create. India post nationalization, pre nationalization also, you must have studied in your history. Historically, actually, India was actually a country of entrepreneurship. We used to have a lot of entrepreneurship across the world, and Indian entrepreneurs used to travel by road right up to Iran, and of course, those days by road or by sea route, people used to travel. And if you look at some maps of good olden days, what was the Hindustan? It was actually right up to Afghanistan, right from that side up to here, Burma and all. So all those routes were actually connected, and India was actually progressing a lot. सोने की चिड़िया कहते थे उसको. I don't know what went wrong during that latter period, but slowly our wealth was actually looted by whatever whosoever came and did the aggressions, and they took a lot of our wealth. So and so much so that post-independence, actually, our country was not developed that much. The country geographically is so vast. First of all, it is difficult to reach. We have more than 6 lakh uh, villages in our country. So when there is a dearth of fund, dearth of capital for the development, there were very few people who were having capital, very few people who were having saving. So the banking industry started actually when banking industry started its role, I can say, in the developmental activities only post-independence, and more so after the nationalization of banks in 1969. The bank started more developmental activities, and they started developmental activities in every nook and corner of our country. After nationalization, the nationalized banks were then started spreading their branch network into rural area. Earlier, banks were actually operating only in urban and metros, but then semi-urban and rural area we started covering. So and so much so that the bank employees, particularly the nationalized bank employees, are required to undergo. I don't know whether you are aware of this. Similar, like doctors are required to give service in rural areas, the bank officers also required to undergo 2 years in uh, rural area and 3 years in semi-urban area during their career. Otherwise, they don't get eligible for promotions. And my first posting, which I told you about to Goa, that was out of that only I was posted in a rural area for my rural posting. So today also, if you see these banks, and after nationalized bank, of course, private sector banks also started actually coming up. Some good banks, uh, DFI, like Development Finance Institutes, like ICICI was a good development finance institute. IDBI, Industrial Development Bank of India, was a good development finance institute. IFCI was another development finance institute. But over a period, these DFIs were actually converted into commercial banks. ICICI Bank became one of the best private sector commercial bank. So, following on the footprints of the ICICI Bank, there were many other banks like HDFC Bank, and today we see Kotak Mahindra Bank. They are also actually playing a more role in the developmental. As I said, our country is always having a dearth of capital, and therefore, even today, 90% of our economic activities are supported by banking and finance sector. There are not many people who are having capital, so they have to necessarily go to bank for funding support. And with the funding support only, people are able to do their businesses. And whether it is a small road vendor, a roadside vendor, or whether it is a MSME person, whether it is a industrial, big industries, big corporates, everybody needs a banking support. So bank, as I said, bank actually is, these are the nerve system of our economy, and therefore the banking has played a rather great role in the development of this. They are the lion's share. The what I would say, the governments have actually played a role in forming the policies, but the implementation of those policies were actually done the banking channel. The regulators also kept on, coming out with the policies for the overall development, or you can say balanced development. And under that direction, this growth had started actually picking up. Today also, if you look at it, in the rural area, semi-urban area also, wherever banks are not there, people find it very difficult for growing. People find it difficult to grow. Then what is another option for those who are not having access to banking channel? Those people go to non-banking finance corporations. They are also actually in the organized sector. But I feel majority of our economy still today is finding it difficult to get access to banking channel because of the geographical spread of our country. It is quite vast. There are many geographical areas even today are unbanked, called unbanked areas, and in those unbanked areas also people are doing economic activities, but because banks are not there, they go through unorganized sector route. Like they will go to money lenders, they will privately borrow money from somebody, if not money lenders. So, and then the cost of their funding is quite very very high. and then they find it very difficult to even repay. So, if the banking of our country had not supported this development, I really can't even imagine, can't even dream what would have been the situation of our. Today, you talk about infrastructure development, whether it is the roads, whether it is the bridges, whether it is the power plants. You talk about the industries, and you talk about the industry, any industry, whether it is a matchbox manufacturing industry or up to even aircraft spare part industries or industries which are actually manufacturing or shipbuilding industries. Everything actually is developed because of the support from the banking industry. So today's Indian economy actually owes a lot to the banking and financial sector of our country. These bankers have actually very sincerely put in their efforts for these developmental activities. Many times they have taken risks of, but banking is again a business. Without risk, you cannot get the results. If we don't take the risk and if we don't really start, because of the risk, if we stop lending, uh, nobody would have developed, because every business now, since you are talking all these discussions are from the point of view of entrepreneurship. Let me tell you, in this journey of entrepreneurship, it is full of risk. And if somebody doesn't understand your risk, or somebody understands the risk and comes forward and support you, then only you will be able to get going. Then only you will be able to uh, do your businesses. So bankers have always taken the risk and supported development of this business community. The entire entrepreneurship development is actually come because of the support of the banking. I think in this nutshell, I have given you glimpses of what exactly banking industry has done for our country.
Thank you for your valuable insights, sir. That was like we got to know really lot of things in your answer. So, sir, in your view, how do you contrast the banking sector of our country with that of developed countries, and what changes do you think can be incorporated to accelerate our country's development?
No, actually, you cannot compare our banking with the development countries. First of all, that comparison itself will be. But what we learn a lot from those developed countries, because their needs are different, their systems are different. Their systems are their ecosystem, what we call it. The ecosystem is totally developed, whereas we are still considered as a developing country. Our country is not having alternate channels like in other countries. If you see some of the developed countries, the economy of those countries, let's say 30-40% must be dependent on the banking, whereas in our country it's almost 80 to 90% economy is dependent on banking, right? And then we have all, even today, whatever products we are giving, those are plain vanilla products. We don't venture out for the products like a derivative products and all. In developed countries, let's say borrower, suppose if you are having some interest rate and all, they actually go for interest rate swaps. They hedge their interest risk. They hedge their currency swaps, the currency risk also. So there are many other models which are many other products which are available in other banking. But in today's our country, these products are used. It's not that these products are not available. We are also providing those products, but those are available. Those are used only by the people who are actually gone on the international level for the business, right? But our majority of our businesses are within our country. Domestic consumption is quite high, and these people need plain vanilla products. If and they're still, many of the entrepreneurs, many of the businesses are still at a developing stage. There are hardly few business houses we can say that they really reach up to international level. Our industries which have gone abroad, and industries which have actually taken themselves to the international level, they are also doing wonderfully well. They are competing well in the international market. So we have the abilities, we have the skills. Only thing what is lacking is this financial strength. And if that financial strength is there, I'm sure we will be able to do a good business in the international market. But after 1991, you must have heard about the word about the globalization. Before 91, our economy was slightly a closed economy. After 1991, we opened up that economy. Actually, rather we started globalizing our economy by inviting even uh, a lot of foreign direct investments in our country. Many sectors were open up for FDIs. Many sectors were open for FIIs, and the technology also started flowing in the country. Today, in fact, in 1991, you must have heard our foreign forex reserves were depleted so much that we used to have only hardly about 15 days forex reserves were available with us. Today, we have more than $500 billion as a reserves. So we have traveled a lot during last this 2 to 3 decades. Today, our strength of our country is really wonderful, but the strength which is required to be spread at the grassroots level, that process is still continuing. And therefore, I always say once our grassroots levels, the bottom of these pyramids are strengthened, then really there will be a good strength in our.
Thank you for adding to our knowledge, sir. Sir, what according to you are some of the key skills fresh graduates would need in the financial domain in the upcoming decade? Also, in regards to that, what key activities would you recommend students to invest their time in?
Okay, first of all, if you are really looking at, let's say, entrepreneurship, and I will tell you from my experiences, not from any textbook reading at all. If anybody is starting some business, I have seen many technocrats, particularly engineers, they're starting their own businesses. What happens that you get a domain knowledge of your business, but only having domain knowledge of the business doesn't help insofar as success of the business. You must have knowledge of your entire ecosystem because when you are working in the globalized market, or once you are working in the, let's say, competitive market, I will say, you have to withstand to the competition because your product, whatever you are bringing in, it's not the unique product. Immediately there will be some copies will be coming. Immediately somebody will be following on those products. You are always exposed to the competition. So first is you have to understand the entire value chain of your business. You have to have not only your own business, but okay, who are your suppliers? Their businesses you need to understand. What are their issues? How you can solve them? How you can get your suppliers strength to your business? How you can actually make your suppliers also very competitive. Competitive in the sense, if they are in a position to sell you at a competitive rate, then only you will be in a position to actually remain a competitive in the business. Then who are your buyers? Okay, how you are keeping them continuously under your fold. Secondly, how is your financial affairs? Because I have seen many times people are having a good domain knowledge, good expert knowledge in their businesses, but they lack a knowledge of the managing financial affairs many times. And this is not only for the young entrepreneur. This is actually this we have observed even in various grown-up corporates also. Big corporates also many times we find it that they need some guidance on the financial matters because when your entire strength, as I said, the strength of the business will come when you have a great support from the financial system. So you must have a proper control over your financial system. But at the same time, the entrepreneur should not waste more than 10 to 15% of his time, valuable time, spending on the financial matters because you are a businessman. If you are spending a lot of time on managing the financial affairs, then your core activities are actually overlooked. Then you are not in a position to actually look at the uh, proper development of your business. And many times, what happens, why the businesses fail is because of that also, because there may be some other issues also apart from the financial matters. But if you are focused on your core business, the time allocation for your core business is less and more for other activities, then it is obvious that you won't be able to develop the business properly. So, as a young entrepreneur, the time allocation is very much essential for you. That how you are allocating your time, how much you are allocating your time in your production cycles, how much you are allocating time in your marketing, how much you are allocating time in your procurements, how much you are allocating time in your financial management. Everything you will have to keep a track of. Secondly, there has to be a proper discipline, the financial discipline, business discipline, and business ethics. The moment you start actually losing sight on the discipline and ethics, you are heading towards you start walking on the dangerous path, I can say. I have seen many entrepreneurs when they start business, uh, many of them because they are aspiring for good life, and particularly those coming from the middle class background, those who are aspiring for the better lifestyle by doing the business. Sometimes they tend to use the business funds for acquisition of assets. Sometimes you find that because the community is looking at you and your success, it is a wrong notion actually. Your success normally is gauged by the society. That's what we feel is how many assets you are acquiring, what is your lifestyle, and just for the sake of showing that society that okay you have started acquiring assets, people start diverting the business fund. I have seen many people, sometimes some gullible entrepreneurs, they don't understand even the difference between the turnover and the profit, net profit. So whatever turnover is there, they feel okay, this is my business, this much income I had. They don't understand what is income and what is turnover. Your turnover, your sale is not your income. Your turnover minus all your expenditures is actually your income. But people, the moment the turnover starts in the business, they start actually acquiring assets. Like the young people like you will start immediately buying a motorcycle. Of course, these days, motorcycle is provided by everybody's fathers. Immediately, the moment you enter into college, because unless motorcycle is given, people don't, boys and girls, they don't go for college. Just take it like to term. But uh, otherwise, an entrepreneur coming from a poor background, the first thing he will do is he will buy a motorcycle. Those who are already having motorcycle from two-wheeler, they will like to upgrade to the four-wheeler. From four-wheeler, they will like to rather in their uh, housing accommodation also they will like to do some kind of improvements. If you are not living in the apartment, you like to go in the apartment. If you are living in rented place, you like to own the place. Yes, aspiring for those is very much required, but you should actually divert the funds only when you have actually earned that, right? So financial discipline is extremely important. The keeping tab on the competition is also extremely important. You have to keep your all systems so agile and so adaptable that the moment there are changes in the customer preferences, you must be able to change your product line also. You must be able to change your business model because your business will depend only on the customer preferences, customer choice. And you must have seen since you are born, the customer choices and preferences change very frequently. That is a very dynamic situation. So therefore, if you are an entrepreneur and if you are not able to change yourself, then it becomes a difficult. Now, what is the greatest example you can see? There are many even world-known corporates who lose their entity because they don't change as per the customer preference. What can be the best example? Nokia phone? Yes or no? Because these days
Yes.
youngsters are having a lot of mobile and a lot of electronic gadgets. So Nokia was having a huge market share. Actually, if you look at it worldwide, they were the first company who were having the maximum market share in the mobile companies. But what happened when other people started actually copying mobile phones and they came out with the cheaper mobile phones? They came out with the mobile phones with a lot of facilities. Particularly, the touch phones came. Perhaps Nokia failed to understand the mood of the customers. And today, Nokia is finding it very difficult to even come back in the mobile segment. So that is one example I just given you. Now, if you look at another example, I will give you how people survive in the. You must have seen the Colgate toothpaste, right? It is so much so synonymous that people, when we talk about toothpaste, they call it a Colgate. Even in rural area, when people go to buy a toothpaste, they will tell the shop owner, all given that let's say a small tapri is there, they will tell him, "Ek Colgate dena." Now that fellow will give something Babul or Lal Dant Manjan or something. They don't mind. They don't, because for them Colgate is a toothpaste, and whichever brand they don't know. So that is so much synonymous. Why Colgate has become synonymous with the toothpaste? Because they kept on changing. I I failed to count how many variants Colgate must have come, and every time you go, there is a different Colgate variant on the shelf, right? Even now, when they started getting competition from the Ayurvedic toothpaste, they came out with the Ayurvedic version, right? So these are the two examples which I have given you, that how you need to keep yourself abreast with the knowledge of the market. Unless you have that knowledge, and market is dynamic, it changes every moment. If you lose actually sight on the market, same thing you talk about the television sets, this Celera or Electron or Onida, the owner's pride, uh, Never Said We owner's pride. Where are those televisions now? They're gone. So the entrepreneur need to first learn these case studies, that how actually there can be a sustainability in the business. So there are various areas. I can keep on talking on how you can make the business sustainable, but then we will have to sit here for throughout the night, right? But I have given you in a short uh, this one in a nutshell, that what exactly is required by the entrepreneur. Because you asked me what should be the focus. The focus cannot be one thing. It has to be 360-degree focus, right?
That was it. Thank you for your valuable advice, sir. Uh, what do you think of the banking industry's current outlook on startup funding, and what, according to you, can be improved with respect to the to this equation?
Rohan, let me tell you. Today, people have started talking about a startup. But for us, in our country, every business, whosoever had started earlier, they're all startups. Today, we talk about the biggest industry in our country is Reliance. But Reliance also was a startup at one point in time. Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani, the great visionary, he started a small business, and from there, it has actually today it is grown as a international business conglomerate. Right. So every startup, actually, whosoever MSME person comes, he's a startup for us. The small borrower comes, he's a startup for us. But this is the terminology is coined of late of calling a startup, right? But we as a banker, what we have done, we actually finance all these startups throughout our journey. Now, what happens that, as I told you, any business which is starting new actually is a fraught with lot of risk, right? So startups, obviously, because they are actually venturing into new field, right? Now, what is a startup? As I told you, everybody is a startup. But these days, we recognize startups only those businesses where people are venturing out for the first time, or uncharted path, you can say. They're walking on that path. Then it becomes really more difficult for the lenders to understand, first of all, because there is nothing to understand about that business. And how do we, unless we understand your business, we understand your risk in your businesses, we will not be able to fund it. First of all, one has to understand that whether it is a bank or whether it is a venture funds, these funds are not owned by these institutions or these organizations. These funds are actually belonging to the contributors, belonging to the public at large. And whether it is a fund manager or whether it is a bank manager or whether it is a financial institution manager, they are actually custodians of public money. And therefore, when the money, they are actually just using their position as a facilitator to provide you the funds. But those funds belong to somebody else. And as a custodian, we require to see that these funds are coming back, right? And therefore, when somebody is coming for the startup business, it becomes rather more critical for us to understand what are the risks in that and how the risks are covered and how money which is invested or lent will actually remain safe and it will come back. So when startup is actually venturing out in a new business, uh, actually it is a challenge to the banking industry, and therefore you must have seen where the risk appetite is more. Those people come forward and support the startup. There are in many developed countries actually there are separate funds for supporting this innovative activity, because innovation, as I said, uh, all these innovative startups, we don't know whether that will be successful or it will fail. And if the chances of failure are more, and if you look at the record of all these startups, the mortality rates in the startups are extremely high. And therefore, it alerts the people who are actually putting the funds in startups to be very, very careful while supporting. But then there are various examples, good examples also of successful startups, right? Uh, the best startup recently, what we have seen in the Byju's or White Hat. Now these are your age startups, which you must have seen. Okay, they started, or Oyo. That's also a good startup. There are good examples also of startup where people can actually look into a business. I can give you one example. This was in 2000, 1998, 99, 2000, that era. I still remember. Somebody had come to us for financing to BPO. Now, BPO, we could not understand that. What exactly you are going to do under the business process organizations, right? And when we started understanding that fellow, he started telling, I am doing the business, I am actually managing the back office of all the foreign companies. Every processes will come to India, they will be processing and sending back. Now those days we were finding it difficult to even understand what he is. Then he said, my business starts only at night time. So I personally went to see his BPO at night time, how actually what exactly activities are taking place. Now, whatever was happening, everything was happening only on the computer, and boys and girls were actually talking on the phones, and they were giving the support systems also. After that, I thought that usual our assessment methods of assessing the credit limits for any businesses will not work. We need to first understand this business, right? So then we started interacting with that person more. We went to various other BPOs also to see how they are functioning. We sat with the seniors who are actually managing these BPOs, that what exactly happens here, how their business metrics are there, what is the success, what is the expectation of the customer, whether how long that orders will remain with them, whether there will be continuity of business. Because as I said, when you are asking for fund, I must need to understand whether your business is really financially viable or not. If your business is financially viable, then I will get a courage to lend you, right? So startup is actually a risky proposition for anyone, but those who are having a good appetite, they can definitely come forward and finance. For those who are having a startups, those who are starting a startup, they must build a model in such a way that it will not fail. Because as I told you, mortality rates in startups are very high. So anybody who wants to start a startup, a new business, venture into new businesses, they must learn from those people first who have failed, rather than learning from the people who have succeeded. So once you learn from the failures of those people, I think you will also understand, okay, how to build the guards against those failures, against those challenges. And you must have your own confidence that yes, this business will be successful. Of course, this is presently what we are going through. Time is a really critical time. Post pandemic, in fact, the established businesses are also shattered. They are finding it very difficult to even continue. So, launching a startup during this time might be, again, the risks will be slightly more higher. But having said that, let me tell you, world is not going to be doomed because of this single pandemic. Only thing, as I told you a few minutes back, the customer preferences will change. The customer requirements will change. Today, everybody is working from home. So look at that. Earlier, all these IT companies, all these big technology firms were having huge campuses for their employees. Today, they are talking that no, we don't need these campuses. People can work from home. Now, when you work from home, what is required? You need a good connectivity at home, right? You need a proper space to work like office-like environment, because you cannot sit anywhere and work, because you need to work for 8 hours, 10 hours. And particularly, I understand, because my two sons are also working from home in US, their working hours are increased. So if your usual hours were 8 hours or 10 hours, now you are working for 12 hours or 14 hours. Then at your home also, you must have that kind of accommodation to accommodate you for those 12 or 14 hours in a same manner. And then your physical postures, your mental postures also should support it. So everything changes. In this change environment, you need to come out with the ideas which will suit for this one. Like this COVID has taught us two basic things: what is essential for your life and what is not essential for life. Yes, yes or no? And during this lockdown, particularly, only essential things were open, like grocery shops, medical shops, vegetable shops, milk shops. Other than that, nothing was open. And we learned from this 6 months that how we can live without non-essential things. So having learned that, today people will buy shorts and t-shirts more than the formal shirts and pants, because they know where they are going to use the formal shirts and pants. Now I am sitting with you in a suit and tie because I got this chance of wearing suit today, only because when I'm getting this chance to talk to you. Otherwise, we are not required to use that. So the customer preferences are changed, the requirements are changed, and if you are starting any business in the current requirement, perhaps uh, your businesses will be successful. Now, what are the current requirements? Like suppose if you are coming in the healthcare, that is the current requirement. If you are having any startup in the healthcare system of any value chain of the healthcare system, there are various activities, right? From checking your oxygen. I was not even knowing about the oximeter earlier. Today, everybody knows what is oximeter, right? So, like that, then there are renewable energies are required. Our country needs a lot of renewable energy. We need retail businesses, our rural industries particularly. Now, we have seen one more example. What we learned is uh, the movement of migrant laborers because of this pandemic. When they started going back to rural areas from wherever they had come in metros, when they are gone back, there are no employment opportunities for them. There are no livelihood resources available. So that means if we prepare our country for the rural industries, for the rural development, obviously there will be a good demand. These people who have gone back, they also have realized that if their areas are self-sufficient, if their areas are developed, perhaps they will get local employment. Actually, if you create a local employment in the rural areas, it will reduce the load from the urban areas, reduce the load from the metro areas. Today, people are migrating from urban or rural areas to metros and urban areas only for the livelihood purpose. And then, in what condition they live? Everybody doesn't live in the apartments, and everybody doesn't have the vehicles to go. Look at any metro, whether it is a Mumbai, whether it is a Chennai, whether it's a Calcutta, whether it's a Delhi, or any for that matter, any A grade city. The people who are migrated, their lifestyle is really very, very difficult. They are coming only and only with the motive of survival, and therefore they are going through all the rigmaroles of that life. But otherwise, if the livelihood is provided to them in the rural area or within the area where they are living, I don't think they will think of moving to these areas. So, as an entrepreneur, if we tap those opportunities, definitely we can get good successes. The best example, the shampoo. I'm telling how people can tap a rural market. The shampoo was supposed to be the upmarket product, isn't it? Or for that matter, your face wash. Face wash is also an urban product, metropolitan product. People, the impression will be that more people use the face wash only in the urban areas or elite class people use it. But when the same sachet was actually, the same shampoo was brought in the smaller sachets, it went into rural area. Today in rural area also, people instead of using those that syrup of shikakai, which I have in my village I have seen people used to boil shikakai and then particularly ladies they will wash their hair with that. Today these sachets are gone into rural areas. Hindustan Lever once I said I heard or I read somewhere that they were saying that their fastest growing product was face wash and their fastest market was actually rural area. So these are some indicators to show that if you want to do a business in that area where there is a demand and where there is a shortage of supply, right? So I think I will stop here because as I told, I can explain in so many words, but then we have limited time. We already now finished 1 hour.
Sir, that was really valuable for it was a message for all the budding entrepreneurs coming up in this period of crisis. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that message. Uh, Thank you so much for taking your precious time and enlightening to our viewers about the financial world and some key experiences in your life.
Right.
We are sure our viewers would have had a bunch of takeaways from this interview. This brings us to the close of the pilot episode of the Pathfinder series. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes as well. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Rohan. Thank you, Arvind. And I
Thank
wish
you,
you
sir.
all the best. Please do start your entrepreneurship. Don't get scared with the challenges because life is full of challenges. Without challenges, if you get scared and if you say no, I will take up a job. I think that's wrong. Our country needs a lot of entrepreneurs, and if young entrepreneurs are coming, the country's progress economy. Because sometime back you asked me about the development of economy. The development of economy, we need the successful entrepreneurs at all levels, at all disaggregated levels, right? And therefore, the people like you who actually taking a lot of good education, technical education, instead of looking for the job, take the risk in life and start your own business because perhaps you will be able to provide employment to many people when you are successful in your business. If you are looking for employment, perhaps you alone will get employment. You will not create opportunities for the success. And there are many people who are there to support you. There are many mentors. In fact, in India, there are a lot of NGOs nowadays actually coming forward to mentor the young entrepreneurs. There are many bankers after retirement. They are as a hobby, as a social cause, as a social work. They do mentoring to the young entrepreneurs. So look for some suitable mentor who will guide you for doing the successful business. There are many successful industrialists today are actually sponsoring many mentors because they know that our country needs a good entrepreneurship. So my best wishes to all of you. If you need any guidance anytime, please feel free even to call upon me and I will be there to support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All the
Sir, I have a question outside of this interview. Like,
best.
I just would like to know your take on like the new umbrella entity being set up as a for-profit organization when there is NPCI is a non-for-profit organization. So, what is the idea behind it? Is innovation in the retail payment space itself the idea behind it, as the RBI states, or
No, look here, because as I told you, our country is a vast country. It's our economy. It's very difficult to capture all the transactions on a single platform, and then your scalability of each platform also has its own limitations, right? When we talk about scalability, particularly when it is actually given into, let's say, for-profit organizations, their motives will be different for scaling it up than the non-profit organization. If I need a scalability to cover my maximum transactions on the digital platform, obviously I need some kind of entrepreneurship who will reach to the nook and corner of our country for bringing them, because you need to pull the transactions on the digital platform. Today also, India has huge potential for the digital transaction. Right? Actually, when you go to any foreign country, people don't carry cash there. People are having either plastic cards, and these days, so even plastic cards are also not required. They are doing all payments through your mobiles and your apps and all those things. So the currency is actually vanished. But in our country, its situation is different. In our country, the currency in circulation keeps on increasing, right? As compared to our total GDP. So we need to reduce that. We need to move everybody on the digital platform. If you go on the digital platform, it has its own benefits also. When you are growing in your own entrepreneurship, if all your transactions are digitally done, it is a cost effective. You can track those transactions, you can grow, you can present those transactions to anyone as a proof of your doing business. So many advantages are there. So if Reserve Bank of India is thinking about uh, you know floating a new platform for profit, I think it will yield a different results than what we are seeing today. And as I said, our country needs those kind of innovative approaches for overall development of our.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir, and I need one more advice from you. Like we strive to put in that entrepreneurial spirit among students, but still we are not that successful. So I need some advice so that people, like students particularly, take up entrepreneurship.
No, as I told you, entrepreneurship is actually fraught with a risk, and you need to give them the confidence that the risks will be there everywhere in life. Apart from that, for entrepreneurship, you also need a capital support from your own capital. Even though banks are coming forward and supporting the businesses, obviously you need minimum capital required for starting up the business, right? So the scarcity of capital also becomes a stumbling block for anyone to start entrepreneurship. But then the government of India and various state governments have actually their schemes as they come out with a soft loan, wherein you are paid, you are required to pay a very minimum interest, and the soft loans are actually of a very longer time. They come as a quasi equity in your business. So there are equity support also provided by the government schemes for starting the entrepreneurship, but you need to have knowledge of that. Okay, so therefore, if someone is rather having some apprehensions about starting the entrepreneurship, one need to analyze, okay, what are the apprehensions, one, two, three, four, and look for solutions. Okay, what are the solutions? And if the solutions are there, because the employment is limited enough, then again, I will say economic backwardness, everybody wants that employment should be of a sustainable employment, wherein you have assured number of years of service, or people many times look only for the government job because it's a security or safety of employment is there. But then all these opportunities will be limited. How many people can compete? And that is the reason today we find it difficult that people are not getting a suitable jobs. And then people, highly educated people also start taking up any small jobs only for the sake of survival. It's not that they like that job. So instead of going through that route, if you start your own entrepreneurship and then if you give in your 100%, perhaps you will be successful. The success rates will be much better than the employment rate, and then you can design your life. You can shape up your life the way you want. So there are benefits of entrepreneurship, and there are risks. But then one has to take a calculated risk. What do you want to do? But I'm sure people who are confident, those who are having confidence in them that they will survive, they will definitely plunge into it, and they will be successful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. How was the interview? Was it fine? Or how did we do?
I mean, you are a seasoned, host like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time for us. And whenever
Right.
my father and Milton sir, whenever I meet him, they speak so high about you. So I just wanted to talk to you
Yeah.
and inspire budding entrepreneurs. So really, we are very grateful to you, sir. Thank
Uh,
you for making time.
Thank you so much. Actually, it is my passion to guide all the young entrepreneurs because I have seen without guidance, they will find it difficult to actually grow, right? And my only motto is that people should grow in our country, people should grow in their businesses, they should be successful in their life. Okay, so my best wishes once again to all of you, and please feel free to contact me anytime. Circulate this amongst your peers to all the students these interactions so that they may pick up good things out of it. And even if they are having any questions subsequently, I
Right.
can definitely come back again whenever you want. We can have this kind of interaction, right?